Hey everybody, welcome on in to Sports Live in the 215. Today we'll discuss the Philadelphia Phillies ending the first half with a record of 55-41. We'll discuss potential X factors and what needs to happen in the second half for the Phillies to go into the playoffs. Um, into the playoffs, like kind of. Hold on. Let me sorry, um, into the playoffs on um, on a heater because last year obviously they were cold heading into the playoffs um, and they ended up getting bounced in the NLDS. So what needs to happen for the Phillies to avoid that? That's what I was trying to say, and we'll discuss some potential X factors for your fighting Phils coming up. Yeah, so this team at 55-41, I mean, 14 games above 500. This team is once again one of the best in baseball, and you'd never know it um, by the way some of the fans happen to react. Um, Happen to react to a lot of their games, but um, yeah, I mean the Phillies they have these certain points where they play good baseball for 10 to 12 games and then not so good baseball for 10 to 12 games. So it makes sense for the fans to be frustrated, but at the same time, it's just like what like your team is 14 games above 500. What is there to be so frustrated about? And then they lose 10 to 12, and it's just like, oh man, like what? Why can't we find consistency? And that's actually crazy how good the Phillies are to be like as inconsistent as they are, but to still be 14 games above the 500 mark. Um, I mean, we had a bunch of guys who were worthy of all stars. Zach Wheeler, obviously, he got in, refused to pitch. He prioritized rest for the second half, which I personally agree with. I think you want your ace to be ready to go, for this stretch run we got coming up. So, um, yeah, and obviously national media um, were kind of shredding Zach Wheeler for not pitching in the All Star game. But I I'd much rather have his arm fresh for his next start than waste it on two meaningless innings in July. Like it's just not practical. I just think that you want to keep who I believe is the best pitcher in baseball healthy for as long as you can, because the the stretch drive is coming up before we know it. And before we know it, so we're gonna need Zach Wheeler. So those are my thoughts on that. That I think Christopher Sanchez and Ranger Suarez not making the All Star game over a guy who had 5 major league starts is an absolute joke. It's not the I don't think an All Star game should be reduced to a popularity contest. It's Major League Baseball once again just fumbles the ball, fumbles the bag, whatever you want to say. I think Ranger and Christopher both deserve to be All Stars this season. Um, they were both absolutely dominant. Ranger, of course, is in his final year of his contract, So it's really good for him to have as good of a year as he's had, and um, for Christopher Sanchez, it's just building off of what he accomplished in 2024. He's been absolutely dynamite. Um, I just think both those guys definitely deserve to be all stars, and yeah, it was frustrating when I heard the news, but then I was like, it's a game that really doesn't matter, and the Phillies did the right thing. They paid Sanchez and Suarez their All-Star bonuses anyway. So um, considering the fact that they should have been All Stars, the Phillies organization made the right move in giving them their All Star bonus. Um, yeah, I think that's an absolute joke that those guys didn't make the All Star team when they deserved it a lot more than Mizorowski, a guy who's made 5 major league starts. Um, and like I don't want to get into market size, but Philadelphia is a much bigger market than Milwaukee. So I'm just frustrated that baseball would do this to two of the probably the most deserving pitchers in the National League to be all stars. Um, obvious, obviously Paul Skeens, who's gonna start the All Star game, is very deserving. But anyone in the National League, like not named him, I don't think a guy who's made 5 major league starts should be able to pitch in the All Star game. Um, and apparently Dave Roberts is actually starting. Is actually going to start Jacob Mizorowski in the All Star game, which I just think is just such a joke. Um, but it's honestly whatever. That game really doesn't matter. One of the things I do want to focus on is the fact that the Phillies ended their final road trip. I want to say they ended it 2-4. They were struggling out in San Francisco and San Diego. Um, and I think that happens with teams going on with East Coast teams going on the West Coast. Like it's just one of those it's just one of those weird things, excuse me, that happens sometimes. Um, and I guess I I guess we'll just have to sit on it until we hit the field again after the break, and then we'll take out our frustrations then. But until then, let's kind of sit back and kind of enjoy this All Star break and um, see what happens. Um, in some other Phillies news, in the first round of the MLB draft, we were able to select Gage Wood out of Arkansas. And why that name might sound familiar to some of you, he was the guy that threw a no-hitter in the College World Series. So an absolute home run by Dave Dombrowski and Preston Mattingly, um, getting another guy in here that's a proven big game pitcher, and we'll we'll see how long it takes him to get up to the big leagues. Um, I said on This Week in Phillies Baseball on the Hardcore Sports Network YouTube channel that he could be here in anywhere from 2 to 4 years. So we're gonna have to wait for some time to see him, it's gonna be pretty electric when he does come up. So I'm really excited for that. And yeah, so um, let's talk some Phillies X factors. Um, and then we'll get into keys for the second half. Um, a big X factor for me is, can the Phillies get at least 70% of Bryce Harper at his like seven get Bryce Harper at 70% of his capability, because I just believe 70% of Bryce Harper is a lot better than 100% of most guys in the major leagues. Like, even if he's not 100% MVP level Bryce Harper, if we can get him to 70% of his normal ability, that would be ideal. He's just such a dangerous bat when he's even moderately healthy. So hopefully this break does him some good, and hopefully it does a lot of the guys on the Phillies some good. Like, this is a veteran team. They've got some older guys, so um, is the break kind of can't break kind of always break the my God, the break came at kind of the perfect time for the Phillies. Excuse me. So yeah, we'll see how they come out of it. Hopefully they can start the second half nice and fast, and expand that lead in the division. Um, and for for me, my offensive X factor has, or my non-injury X factor, I guess I'll say, is the bullpen. Um, this bullpen really's got to find some consistency. Um, it's just such a it's a it can be a struggle some nights. Matt Strom, even on Sunday, you were kind of holding your breath in that ninth inning. Um, so hopefully this bullpen can find some consistency, and we can kind of straighten some things out, and then we'll figure it out once we get to the playoffs. I think that the Phillies desperately need, well, they obviously, like every team, their starters gotta um, keep it rolling for 6-7 innings a night, and then the bullpen can kind of take over for 6 outs ideally. And and yeah, I just think I think our bullpen, whenever they are called upon, is gonna need to be as close to um, be as close to 100% as they can be each time they're called into the game, and we'll see what happens. If the Phillies bullpen can right the ship, I don't think um, I don't think there's many teams in baseball that can play with the Phillies, honestly. Um, just because their starting pitching so good, their offense, when their offense is on, it's one of the best in baseball. So I just think that if we can get this bullpen straightened out, maybe we'll be able to add a piece or two at the deadline. That if even if well even if we can get the guys we have straightened out, that would be huge. I just think this team's gonna need the bullpen um as we get into late September, early October. So it's gonna be that's gonna be one of my questions is, can this bullpen kind of turn it around? They had a rough first half. Um, to say the very least. Um, yeah, and my final X factor is really Andrew Painter. Whenever he does come up, it's can can he perform well enough to stick at the big leagues? Um, and if he can, the Phillies have a guy they can count on in their rotation um, over the last few years of Wheeler, and um, even beyond when Zach does eventually retire um, after the 2027 season. Um, so that would be huge. So it would be it would just be um, such a huge coup for Dombrowski and Mattingly and that whole front office if you can have a pitcher, you can have a starting pitcher making the minimum and have him um, pitch well above the value of his contract. Um, that would just be ideal for a Phillies team that already has a lot of good starting pitching. If Andrew Painter comes up here and just absolutely shoves, then it just becomes another guy in your starting rotation in your pitching staff that can just shove it, um, can just kind of shove it up up everybody's uh, up everybody's ass. So um, yeah, I think the eventual call up of Andrew Painter would be absolutely um, crucial to the success of the Phillies in the second half. And um, obviously, we have pitching in front of and behind Painter, um, but his, his success, if he's successful, the Phillies will be successful. So I think the I think the call up of Andrew Painter will be absolutely paramount, and I do think the Phillies will make a move at the deadline for a reliever, um, and we'll see if they end up calling up Justin Crawford, um, and giving him some major league time in the second half. Um, I if that does happen, I am excited to see how he'll perform. Like I've seen his stats in the minors. He's performed beautifully. I think he's hit something like 330. Um, so to be able to have that guy come up would be to not just come up but come up and contribute would be absolutely huge. Um, and yeah, we'll see. We'll kind of see what happens on that front, and yeah, I want to thank you guys if you had the chance to listen to my appearance on This Week in Phillies Baseball. It was a lot of fun. James Scorza and James and Austin were absolutely were just it was just fun to talk Phillies baseball with those guys, and uh yeah, it was fun except for my internet going out. But yeah, it's always a fun time getting to chat it up with those guys for an hour about some Phillies baseball. So yep, good way to kind of go into the break. And yeah, thank you guys for listening to this. And as always, go Phils.